Hi everyone, and thanks for joining. My name's Michael Stockdale, and I'm from B2C Logistics Consulting. We're giving you this presentation today in partnership with the Australian Supply Chain and Logistics Institute. Today I want to talk about the driving forces that are behind the increasing demand for supply chain as a service. Now, there are five main drivers of change in the supply chain universe. That's the consumer behaviour, technology evolution, the evolution of sustainability, economics, and risk and uncertainty. Now, I think the consumer behaviour aspect is far more important than the others simply because it defines the very purpose of the supply chain itself and what it's there for. Well, we can see here from these points that consumers expect to be far more informed, consumers are time poor, seeking experience, but also appreciating the personal experience far more than ever before, but having a little tolerance for any error or mispicks and expecting immediate gratification, i.e. we're expecting same-day deliveries or at the very, very worst, next-day deliveries. Now, if you apply those principles to any product or service that you might be purchasing, particularly online, I think you'll agree that most of these, if not all, do actually apply. Now, if I pick a random product such as a mountain bike purchase that I might want to purchase online, you can see that many of these things here do actually apply. When I look online, I want to know all about the particular product, i.e. the mountain bike itself. I want to know all about the reseller as well and their service levels. I want to know too what are potential adjacent products or complementary products. And that may even apply to information. If I'm purchasing a bike, I may want to look at information about how I can do tricks on it or be a better rider or a safer rider, or even where I can ride. So even when it comes to the online world, it's still going to have to be regionalised because obviously I'm going to be interested in local trails to ride on, not ones on the other side of the world. But from the product itself, I'd still want to be able to perhaps look at various prices and compare prices. I'd want to be able to read the crowd reviews, such as on Google Reviews, about the product itself and also about the reseller, as I say. But I also want to know, where is this bike from? You know, how is it made? Where is it made? And even who's made it? And hopefully it's not been made in a sweatshop or something like that. I want to know also, well, whereabouts is it now if I'm ordering it? And when will I actually receive it? So all of these things are obviously supply chain driven. Now, from a technology point of view, I won't go through all of these because I think most of us will already be well aware of a lot of these new emerging technologies. But one thing I want to talk about there is how these emerging technologies do enable the supply chain more and more through their connectivity, through the proliferation of information, through increased visibility, and bearing in mind that technology is continuously changing. Now, from a sustainability point of view, there's three pillars of sustainability. There's planet, people, and profits. Now, from a resource management point of view, obviously that's the environment or the planet. Much is being changed in that particular regard. I've just cited here about the ISO certifications, and there's an increasing number of ISO certifications there as well. From the commercial benefits, of course, when it comes to sustainability, if an organisation is not financially sustainable, it's not going to last, so it's still a very, very important thing. But here I want to point out more so about social sustainability because I think it's one that we often tend to neglect. We need to be well aware of the many, many stakeholders along the supply chain, for example. Now, they may involve employees, customers, the local community, governments, and other lobby groups, whether they be for or against the product that we may be selling. And they'll also have a broad array of different interests and different agendas as well, such as health and safety, training and development, and even diversity and opportunity for all. And one other important thing that's changing in sustainability as well is the fact that many countries now are actually requiring under legislation that organisations submit a corporate responsibility report each year as well. So it does show that things are changing there. Now, from an economics point of view, I think the most important one here is about globalization of supply chains. Now, that inevitably creates a much, much larger scale, much wider footprint around the world for a particular supply chain, even though we are still needing to have a much more responsive supply chain from these larger supply chains. Now, all of that comes together to add a huge amount of complexity. From the risk and uncertainty perspective, now, although we've all lived through the past year, we've experienced the disruption that the pandemic, for example, has caused here. But it just goes to show that supply chains are vulnerable for many reasons, more so than just the pandemic that's happened at the moment. So a huge amount of change going on there. Now, how does this translate, and how do we interpret this in our organisations? Well, I want to go back to what actually makes a competitive advantage and how that has changed as well, because our interpretation of what is a minimum service level and a competitive edge has changed as well. Now, I refer you to these here, and let me just get my pointer out if I can find it. I can't find it here, so I won't use it. But of course, speed that I spoke about before used to be a competitive advantage, but nowadays the customer, for example, expects that all organisations will actually deliver within a day or even on the same day. Product ranges themselves are actually much wider than they've ever been before. We expect a much wider variety of products. Information is expected, again, to be provided, and plenty of information. We do expect our supply chains to be transparent all the way upstream. As I'd said earlier, we want to know where our product came from, who made it, and where it is now, and when will I actually receive it, along with sustainability and error-free. So these are all now simply expected of anyone who wishes to qualify to actually be in the race for a particular product. So what is actually a competitive advantage nowadays? Well, it's still efficiency, because there's always going to be cost pressure on any organisation. So we still have to drive forward with our efficiencies. But there's some new ones here. Now, for sure, our world is going to be continuously disrupted into the future, and perhaps we're also seeing an acceleration of disruption in many of our sectors. So organisations need to be adapting to continuous disruption and accept it now as a way of life rather than just a once-off event. We need to also be mindful that we're needing to satisfy multiple customer segments rather than just one customer type. We need to be focusing on the agility of our supply chains. Now, this means, of course, that we need to perhaps consider responding to actual demand rather than forecasting. Now, for sure, there is a role in increasing the accuracy of our forecasts, but where there's an opportunity for an organisation to design a supply chain that can respond to the actual demand very quickly, then hopefully they won't need to be relying so much on forecasts. And last but not least, of course, is the customer experience. So customers expect to have a very seamless integration where they can move across multiple channels. So all of this, what are the implications of all of these changes for each of the supply chain drivers? Now, there are 6 key supply chain drivers. 3 of them are logistical drivers and 3 of them are cross-functional drivers. Now, they consist of facilities, inventory, transportation, sourcing and procurement, information and pricing. Now, when it comes to facilities, for example, the implications here are that organisations need facilities such as warehouses and factories and such to be scalable. They need to scale up and they need to be able to scale down as demand requires it. Supply chains are also spread right across the world, or at least across wide geographies. Facilities too nowadays need to be able to repurpose because they're being used for different things nowadays as business models and business needs are changing. And of course, if you're spread across multiple geographies, you also need to be mindful of the regional regulatory needs and even the HSE compliance. Now, from an inventory point of view, what's changing there is, of course, we've got an increasing variety of products. There's also a demand for recyclability and returns, and those types of things. The one thing I want to point out here, though, specifically, is the reposition DCP, or the decoupling point. Now, the decoupling point might be the point along an entire supply chain where we swap from being a push to a pull supply chain, or a lean to an agile supply chain, or where we may actually choose to start introducing different types of value adds to the particular product. Now, from a transportation point of view, there we've got the need for time criticality and an ever-changing fleet configuration. From the sourcing point of view, transparency and a shared concern for sustainability, for example, has led us to having a great deal of scrutiny over our supply chains. Not to mention that the life cycles of products continue to reduce, and cost and quality controls continue to also come under pressure. From an information point of view, well, nowadays we've got a huge amount of data. Some would say too much data. So the challenge now is, how do we connect all of that data, analyze it in a way that the output is something sensible that we can actually base our informed decisions on. And from a pricing point of view, the segmentation of different types of customers and the different price points that can be achieved are also implications of the changes. Now, if I move on to the last. Okay, so this slide shows us the benefits of outsourcing our supply chain as a service through leveraging the shared use of infrastructure, intelligence and expertise. You can see there, when it comes to facilities, for example, organisations are able to use shared facilities, and then they can pay it on a per-use basis. It allows organisations to spread into new regions, test new markets, and perhaps even withdraw from regions, as well as scaling up and scaling down on a per-region basis. It also outsources the compliance, so that the supply chain organisations, who should be the experts on the required regulations per region, so they can take care of all of that. And it also allows organisations to diversify their services, so they can try new services and they can withdraw services to their clients as well. Now, from an inventory point of view, I think the important one here is that it does allow organisations to reposition their decoupling point along their supply chain. Now, they can apply that to an entire range, to a category, or even down to a product-by-product basis. From a transportation point of view, similar to the facilities, it allows organisations to share the infrastructure, and thereby they pay only per use, and it still allows them to spread into regions and withdraw from regions, and it allows them to withdraw services and increase their services as well. From a sourcing point of view, it does provide transparency. It does provide things such as sustainability reporting, economies of scale. It brings in expertise and should, through economies of scale, lower your purchasing costs there. From an information point of view, I think this is the most important one, because it does allow a centralised control tower to be activated. It provides advanced analytics, and it even gathers much more data. From a pricing point of view, it reduces your CapEx, it reduces your OpEx, and it provides deeper insights that would allow organisations to look at different types of customer segments and develop pricing policies per customer segment. So what that comes down to at the end of the day is, of course, we recognise that we're in an ever-changing business environment nowadays, and outsourcing your supply chain as a service allows the organisation to change their business model much more readily, and also it allows organisations to adopt the most recent technologies and share the costs and, of course, share the risks across many other partners along the way. So I hope you enjoyed this short outline of supply chain as a service. We'd be delighted to talk more about it, and perhaps even help your organisation to look further into it. I'll leave you with my or our email and our contact details on the final page here. You're most welcome to contact us at B2C Logistics Consulting, or you can even get in touch with us through the Australian Supply Chain and Logistics Institute. So thanks for watching, guys, and see you next time.